Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to create a campfire using some assets that are available up on the timeline called fire features. I've already imported them so you can see them right here. I didn't want to waste the time on the video. What I've also done is I've created a plane and then I dragged a first-person controller in so that we'll be able to take a look at the fire as we create it. So you definitely want to make sure you push your first-person controller out at the edge of your plane so that you can see what's going on here. Okay, so what we're going to do is take the campfire model here, and you can see it's a little model of a campfire, and we're going to drag this in and set it up so it's right on the ground, so you can see it's pretty big right now. Okay, but for what we're doing today, that's good. We can always change what it looks like, but 0.5 actually should be about right when we actually get up close to it. Okay, so now that we've got that sitting there, we want to add a capsule collider because we don't want the player colliding with this thing, do we? Okay, so we're going to quickly add a capsule collider by having it selected and go under component physics, and there's our capsule collider. Yes, we are going to lose the prefab. That's okay. Click add, and you notice it's pretty tiny. Well, I've sat there and I've already sort of worked out what we need to do for the size and everything of our collider. So the radius is going to have to end up being 2, and the height needs to be 5, and then the center, everything else is good, but for Y we want to raise it to 1.5. Okay, and you can see real quickly as we turn around, it's in pretty good shape, and for what we're doing now, that's going to be fine. One of the reasons you would prefer to use a capsule collider versus a mesh collider is because mesh colliders are much more expensive, and in this case we don't need the preciseness. We just don't want them running into the fire. Okay, what fire, you ask? Well, that's what we're going to start creating now. We're going to start creating our fire. The first thing we need to do is add a particle system. So we go under Game Object, we go under Create Other, and it happens to be right at the very top. It's called Particle System. So we select it. We're going to rename that particle system, and we're going to call it Fire System. Because what you're going to see is we're going to create a separate fire system and a separate smoke system that we're going to add to the campfire. Now you should already start seeing what it looks like down here. If not, move it around so that you can see it outside of the campfire. We'll sit there and put it actually in the campfire model when we get it set up. Now, there are 3 parts to this. We have our particle emitter over here, we have our particle animator, and then we have our actual particle renderer. Okay, and basically the particle emitter, that's what actually emits the particles. The animator is if they're going to be moving, or more precisely if we want them to fade in and out and change color, we do that here. And then the particle renderer is what actually displays them. Okay, so now under the particle emitter, we want to make these particular sizes, and I've messed around with it, and you can see on a lot of videos out there on YouTube that they've got similar numbers for this. We're going to make the min size 0.5, and we're going to make the max size 2. So that's the minimum maximum size of the particles, and they're going to end up being randomized. And you can already see you can see the difference already over here as it's changing, which is why we want to see it as we're going. Okay, now energy, we want minimum energy as 1 and the max energy as 1.5. Now the min and max energy actually refers to the lifetime of the particle, and you're starting to see now that it's showing up being a little bit more random because some particles are lasting more than others. Okay, now we want to figure out how many we want at any one time. Okay, and our min emissions are going to be 15, and our max emissions are going to be 20. Okay, and again, if you can pay attention, you can look at the differences we're seeing with our little particle. I want to raise him up a little bit because it looks like he was down. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to change the y of the world velocity, and we're going to change that to 0.1, and you're going to see that particles seem to be going a little bit on the y-axis. The reason we want to do the world velocity versus the local velocity is that, let's say we tip it over. Well, then the y of the local is the y of the particle system, and since we tipped it over, it's going to go horizontally now. but we want our fire to always be moving up. So by using the whirl particle, even if we the whirl velocity, even though we tip it over, it's going to head straight up. Okay. Now we're going to set a random velocity for y, and a good starting point is 0.2. Okay. And you're saying, well, I don't see that much happening. You have to have a little patience here till we get done. Now the starting speed of the particle, we're going to sit there, and that's the tangent velocity. We're going to change x and z this time, not y, to 0.2. Okay. And then we want to make sure that the emitter velocity scale is set to 0. Okay, and what that really represents the speed of the particle if the emitter moves. So in this case, we're not going to have it move anywhere, so it doesn't matter. Okay, now simulate in world space, we're going to uncheck that. Okay, that way it's creating things relative to our position that we're in. One shot we want no in this case. If you were doing a puff of smoke or an explosion, which we'll cover in probably next week, we wanted the animation to run once and then go away and not run again. Hence, it's only got one shot. Okay, and now our ellipsoid values, we're going to set all of them to 0.1. Okay. Okay, so we're starting to get that little glow there. Remember, this is just the fire. This is not the smoke. Okay. So now that's what we're going to do inside our particle emitter. So I'm going to sit there and reduce that down so you can see it better, and we're just going to work on the particle animator right now. Okay. If we want color to be animated, we're going to click animate color. Okay. Now what we want to do for our colors is we're going to start with white in this for this first color, color 0, and when we get to color 4, we want this to be a dark orange. So we're going to click on this, and there's our little color chooser, and we're going to sit there and find it to where we get something we want. I like that color right there. Okay, and we want it to be an alpha of 0, and we're going to want the first one to be an alpha of 0 as well. The reason is, if we don't, the particles will actually appear to pop out of nowhere versus gradually fade in and fade out again. Okay, now what we want is we want to gradually go to a little yellow, yellow, orange, more orange, and red as we go down. So on this one here, we're going to find that nice little orange that we had there. Actually, I want a little more yellow in this one. And yeah, I like that color right there. Or I want a little more yellow. Maybe a little more yellow. Too much yellow. Okay, that one's good. Then I'm going to, and what I want for the alpha, I want this alpha to be around maybe 80 to 100, someplace in there. Because what we're trying to do is we want these things to actually start low, go high alpha. The highest alpha should be on color animation 2, then back down to 0 again. And you can see these little bars underneath the color selection in the particle animator. We can actually sit there and see what the different alphas are. So now we're going to go to this one. We're going to change it over to that nice little orange that I had, and I want this one to be maybe like this. And I'm just going to do this really quickly because you can, obviously you can play with this to your heart content to get it exactly how you want. And a little bit darker. Yeah, that was going to be due for now, but what I need to do is this one needs to be back down to about 80 to 100 again, and this one I want somewhere around maybe 180. That's close enough. Okay, by the way, something you may not have known, but these little eyedroppers here that you see, if you select that, you can actually pick a color. Okay, for instance, if I select that eyedropper, okay, notice how the color changes as I go over something until I pick it. Okay, so let me go and fix this again because I want this all white. Okay, now I've got it fixed. But anyways, that's what those droppers can do. So you can pick a color you really want, and you can sit there and determine what it is that you're actually able to see. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second here. Okay, I'm back, and as you can see, we've started to get something that looks a little bit more fire-like. Okay, that's a good thing. A couple of things we want to change. Size grow over here, which is how much it's going to the particles are going to grow or shrink during their lifetime. We're going to make this a minus 0.3 because we want the particles to shrink over time. Okay, why didn't that? Minus 0.3. There it goes. Okay, and we want the random force right here to be 1 for just x and z. Okay, and we're going to change the force of y to 1. And again, these are settings you get, and now you notice we're starting to get that little flicker up here now. Okay, and now we want to sit there and on dampening, and dampening represents how particles slow down over time, and we're sitting here with 1 means there's no dampening at all. We're going to put ours as 0.8. I know it seems a little weird that 1 it means none. Now auto destruct should be off. What auto destruct does is if all the particles are gone in one shot from when the particle emitter is selected, it would actually destroy the particle emitter and get rid of it. This is great for explosions. So when we do explosions, you'll see we'll end up using those. Okay. So hopefully yours looks something similar to what I have right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this particular video, and as soon as I come back, what we're going to do is we're going to start working with the particle render settings.